Well, welcome in. Let's talk Broncos. This week, you'll notice that we voted Joey Richards off the island, and that's because of his crimes against all things horses and mythical creatures related. Yeah. So his bold prediction simply was not bold enough, and therefore he must sit out this week. So you get myself, Bree Macis, and Zach Seegers. Zach, we get to recount a fun one, but first and foremost, how are you?
I'm fantastic, man. I am thrilled. This is the first time in my professional existence, like the Broncos have had a bona fide good football team. Like even last year, there were detractors saying, oh, they only beat one good team, and it's the Buccaneers in week 3. Blah blah blah. This team's beaten both Super Bowl teams. They've got the best record in the NFL. If you want to talk tiebreakers, they're even a little bit ahead of Bree Macis's Patriots. And I'm thrilled. I mean, this is a great time to either be a Broncos fan or be working in Broncos media. I'm happy to see the team doing well. And then I think, there's maybe even more reason to believe than there was before, not only because of the quality of the win, but the quarterback looked so much better. And, it's a quarterback driven league. If he plays like that, the rest of the way, this team's going to be very dangerous. But Bree, how are you feeling? You got to be there in person. What was that like?
It was worlds apart from the game previously on that Thursday night showdown against the Raiders. I'm happy you mentioned it, Zach, because I'm trying to count backwards how many years it's been. But the news of the Russell Wilson trade, sorry to mention the name, the jump scare to everybody watching, but the immediate it's going to be a decade before this team is good again, and the downtrodden years that followed of to be a fan and to be covering the team and to see the record of 9-2, it starts to feel surreal. You have to pinch yourself and then you have to check yourself, right? And I think a lot of this episode will be, reacting to that win, which is instrumental in changing a lot of the narrative, not just nationally, but within Broncos country and within the fandom, which becomes even more divisive as they're finding success, which I didn't think was a possibility, but fandoms are fickle, right? It's passionate. It's led by a lot of hope, and it's led by a lot of maybe contradiction with what the numbers might say, and what the analytics might project, and that's where you can meet midway somewhere and say that this Denver Broncos team is 9-2. They're atop the AFC. They are winning the AFC West, and they just beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a game where they did look convincingly good, and the offense has progressed. And I think first and foremost, that needs to be shouted from the rooftops before we break into everything else. But yes, I was there, and it was a heck of a game. But I was nervous the entire time. And I know I tweeted very shortly after that game that I didn't realize a 9-2 atop of the conference itself, that I would be suffering from heart failure. And I don't mean that lightly. I think that it has been a while since I have been on the edge of my seat in what feels like literally every single game. And that's the joyous part of having a team that is continuing to win and is so incredibly impressive, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And so speaking of that, Zach, I want you to recount, I guess, what was the key to this victory for this Denver Broncos team? Was it the defense just being their elite selves and really cranking up every bit of pressure they possibly could on Patrick Mahomes? Is it the team's adversity when it comes to rallying against, and I'll do it, I'll be the person, I'll be that guy who says that against all odds, they were able to beat the Chiefs and the referees? What are you pointing towards the most when it comes to this matchup?
I think that's a great question. To me, the thing that stands out the most is going to be, and I don't want to rob the defense because the defense has been amazing, but to me, that's not the key because they're awesome every week. They're the best defense in the league. I can bank on that. To me, the key, what came through, and I think it's going to be the key to the rest of the season too, Bo Nix. I think he deserves a lot of flowers for the promising signs we've seen over this last month, and there's been some grisly ones too with the Texans game. Granted, that's against a great defense, and the Raiders game. Granted, that's on a short week, but I think the Cowboys and Chiefs games are the two best games he's played in his career to date. His accuracy was tremendous. You saw him, working through progressions, especially in this game against the Chiefs, like a level of calm in the pocket. His footwork still has a ways to go, but it was so much better than it's been for much of this season. And I really like that. Hats off to him. Like, they do not win this game if not for him doing that. Like, he deserves a lot of praise, I think, from Broncos country for doing that. Now, I think there's pressure on him to maintain it. And this is through no fault of his own, but it seems like J.K. Dobbins is out for the year. It sounds like maybe there's some optimism if the Broncos made it all the way to the Super Bowl, he could be back for that. But, even that might be optimistic. So I'm operating right now that he's done for the year. And winning games up until last week, and not every game, but generally speaking, it was J.K. Dobbins leading the way for that offense. I think everyone could agree on that. And you did not have that anymore. And credit to Bo, he came through when they needed him most. They needed him this week. They couldn't lean on Dobbins. Harvey proved that he's not ready to take on that whole workload yet, or at least it seemed that way this week. And Bo came through. Now, unless Harvey turns it around, or I don't even want to say that, but proves he can be like a workhorse back down the stretch, which doesn't seem super likely, Bo's going to have to keep carrying the offense the rest of the way. And that's a lot of pressure, but if he plays like he did against KC, he can do it.
Now, Zach, I'm glad that you pointed it out that because you couldn't lean on the run game, I think Bo Nix then had to instill within himself a bit of confidence and sort of make it happen. It does beg a question as to why that's not something that's just instrumentally part of his game. But I also think that there was a correction with this one game, the 23-day streak of understanding the importance of getting the offense right, where he looked very calm, and he being Bo Nix looked very calm, confident, decisive, and most importantly, had his entire body over that foundation. His feet were set, and I think that just paid dividends in needing to have those chunk yardage plays and make those deep throws. And in the face of more adversity, when it comes to drop balls, did not shy away from what needed to continue to happen in order to move the stakes. So whether or not this is a highlight of what we know this offense can be, if this is a sense of the identity and the shift within the team of understanding when adversity hits, like a J.K. Dobbins injury, et cetera, on the offensive side of the ball, what do they need to do in order to correct but not overcorrect? And I think we saw a really great sampling in this game, because when you're contending against the Kansas City Chiefs, part and parcel of what the Super Bowl matchup was last season, they already beat one of them. They beat the defending world champs, and they just beat the runner-up. So now you get to start painting a picture of what this offense needs to look going forward. Now we're a part of a completely different show. That's fun. I don't know why that happened, but welcome to Altitude Adjustment. This is Bree Masis and Zach Segers. Zach is muted. He's going to keep talking.
That's how you know it's Let's Talk Broncos, because I'm muted. Sorry, Bree.
No, you're okay. I more than likely just the ghost of Mario Vitanzi is just floating in the ether as we talk about this team. He couldn't help it, but ESP his way in. Aside from the fact that the Broncos now are showing that they are truly competitors, I love the post-game reactions from the team that were immediately like, what are they going to say now? So Zach, put yourself in that position. What do you say now about this team as they do one more check mark, one more game to the win streak? They're headed into a bye week. How do you turn this against them now? Like, not saying this is how you feel necessarily, but now what's the topic of conversation?
Can they keep it up? I think that's going to be everything. Now, the frustrating thing is every time it seems like the Broncos beat someone, the conversation becomes, well, now this team is doomed and they're terrible. Like that's the thing with the Chiefs. Can you I think one thing that would be nice is, can you stop playing down to your opponents? Like, these next two games are weak opponents. Even if Jaden Daniels miraculously plays for Washington, like, that's not a very good team, and he's going to be a diminished version of Jaden Daniels. And then you get the Raiders in Vegas. Now, granted, those are road games. You can always get upset on the road. That Washington game in particular, you're going to the East Coast. That can always be tough. Thankfully, it's not an early window game, but can you not get too high on yourself over this bye week and not fall victim to a trap game against like Washington or Vegas? Because if you just take care of business against those opponents you should absolutely beat up on, you're talking about a final 4 weeks where you get 3 of 4 at home against pretty inconsistent Jaguars and Packers teams, Chargers offensive line that Chargers team is just much more beat up than the team we saw in week 3. They're a much lesser version. Plus it's in Denver. And then of course you get Kansas City in Arrowhead too, but we just saw the Broncos handle that team pretty darn well. It'll be a better version of the Broncos then because they'll have PS2 back. Like, you can feel pretty good about this team maybe winning out. You just got to do one game at a time. And this team, hasn't been in that spot before. Like, very few, I guess maybe like Mike McGlinchey and like the other 49ers guys, Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga. Maybe the Eagles were that good some when Singleton was around, but for the large part, none of the players have been in this type of spot before. And can you maintain? You got to keep stacking them.
You literally have to keep stacking them. They have to keep raking in the stats as they approach a season-long record. Zach, I know you have a close eye on that, and I'll let you report out on how close they are. But I wanted to maybe touch on, too, the midpoint of the season has passed, but they're entering a really high point as they have a bye week to get instrumentally more healthy. And with J.K. Dobbins not really having a season-long visionary plan for him to be back, by the Super Bowl, I hear that, and, fingers crossed that he heals up well. Absolutely heartbreaking because I'm so fond of the individual on top of being fond of the player and also what he has done and kind of folded himself in within this Denver Broncos team. It really was like he was supposed to be here. And so I hope that is not the last that we have gotten to see of J.K. Dobbins. But, in better news, the Broncos are going to be getting, entirely healthy at a really great pace now. Ben Powers obviously still predicted out through December. So you're a little ways away on that. But Patrick Surtain and Alex Singleton both being possibly available after the bye week has to be a great omen because Vance Joseph in this defense has been able to hold down, lock everything up and, make do while both of them are out for various extended periods of time. You had the rotational transition of back again with Dre Greenlaw. And this defense could get even scarier because, at his best, Patrick Surtain is good for at least 7 points out on the field, right? And that starts taking these closer games to a little bit larger of a differential. And so, Zach, what are your hopes for post-bye week health of the team? And do you feel like that's instrumental for really seeing some of the best football coming out of this Broncos team in the second half of the season?
I think it's totally instrumental. We talk about like it's an old cliche, but it's a true cliche. The team that wins the Super Bowl is often like the healthiest team at the end of it. Like, so much of it is getting, down the stretch. And I think this is especially true this year where there isn't that clear dominant team. It feels like a lot of teams are kind of in this same tier at the top. And I think we're going to have a great playoffs as a result of that. But with everyone lumped together so closely, like, who's healthiest is going to be a big factor. Now, thankfully, they've generally had good health under Sean Payton, knock on wood. I'll do that on my desk right here. But, and I'm optimistic about it coming back. Like, Dobbins is done for the year. But outside of that, like, I don't think the pec injury, once Surtain does come back, shouldn't be something that's like hampering him all year. It's not like last year when he came back from the MCL, I believe it was,
Mm-hmm.
or Riley Moss rather came back from the MCL and was not the same the rest of the way. And it's like, man, great to have Riley Moss. Oh my God, excuse me. Great to have Riley. I knocked into my, as you can tell, I reorganized my background. I got my my Aaron Rodgers signable here.
Oh, throwback.
Right. So just knocked into that. Excuse me. But uh, I think you should get a great version of Pat Surtain, and I'm excited to see what this defense can do because, like, we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen Vance Joseph with all his Infinity Stones yet. Like he's got PS2, he's got Hufanga, he's got Greenlaw, he's got Zach Allen, he's got Nick Benito. They're fingers crossed, all on the field at the same time, and again, this has been the best defense already when you've been down Dre Greenlaw for the first hunk of the season, and now down Pat Surtain for this second hunk of the season. What this unit's going to be like at full strength is very exciting to me.
What are they going to be at full strength? And also, much like we've been commenting on the Denver Nuggets this season, as Colorado sports fans, if you're watching along, the depth is deep, then the bench is benching, right? And I feel like the Broncos also have a case of they are strongly developing a lot of their younger talent, so that you see this as a duplicatable success rate as your younger guys really start to play up to speed with some of your veterans, and how you're seeing a lot of the younger acquisitions really push some of that veteran talent. Of note, I wanted to point out, star of the game, Jaquan McMillan, who just absolutely world-beating efforts, tracking down his prey, etc. But I also, watching back the highlights of that game, Q Robinson getting some of those snaps and looking quite like skillfully sound, talented. And I think that you just see the inevitability of not having those sore points alongside your edge, or being able to plug and play some of your defensive linemen. So Zach, that leads me to my first question of this little section, confidence level on Jonathan Franklin Myers being re-signed with the team. I asked Joey last week when you were gone, and he was further down, so he had regressed slightly in his. But spoiler alert, I think you've gone in the other direction. But maybe you changed up in the last 24 hours. How do you feel about it?
I feel much better, and I know you're giddy to hear this. I think right now I would put it at like an 80. And I think, there's a healthy chance that it's not the case. It's 20% chance. That's better than the chance of rolling any given number on a roll of the dice. So I definitely don't think it's a lock by any means. But I think you look at the Broncos cap situation coming up, and it should be about 60 million in terms of cap space this offseason. And that's after they've locked everyone up for not everyone, but mostly everyone up long term. They got the Benito deal done, they got the Zach Allen deal done, Surtain, Miners, et cetera, et cetera. To where now it's kind of just the guys who were always on the border. Malcolm Roach, Justin Sternad, JFM, I think are the three guys that you're like for sure. And Jaquan too. I'm talking unrestricted free agents, to be clear. When I highlight those first three, Sternad, JFM, and Roach are the three true free agents the Broncos are going to have to figure out how to handle. You got $60 million. Like JFM right now, even if we want to be pretty optimistic and say on JFM side and say he signs for like 20 or even a little north of 20, it's going to be spread out where the bigger cap hits are always later on. They'll probably put void years on it if the way this front office is operating is any hint. And then Malcolm Roach, like I think he might be expensive, but not terribly so. I think they can make that work. And Justin Sternad, had a similar, if not more impressive year last year, was on the open market, did not sign for a lot of money. I imagine it would be quite similar. I think we often overestimate how much like the players on our team will sign for. Understandably, we're not aware of the whole scope because we're not watching the other 31 teams as closely. I bet JFM signs like around 20. I would probably take the under on 20 if that was the line. I bet Roach, somewhere between 5 and 10. Maybe I'm way too low on that, but I think it's somewhere between 5 and 10. And Sternad, I bet, is probably under 5, maybe a little over a 5, but I think that's absolutely maxing it out. And again, that's average. That wouldn't be the first year. They can fit it and still be pretty active spenders in free agency. I think there's no reason not to. And the last argument I'll make on this, last year, and I think it was understandable, it was the right stance to have, I think, at the time. But you looked at the guys coming up, and it was like Sutton's going to need a deal. Zach Allen's going to need a deal. Nick Bonito's going to need a deal. Who else? There's one other they just signed that I'm spacing on right now. Zach Allen, I don't know. But those three at least.
Yeah.
And it's like, how are they going to sign all these guys? Oh, DJ Jones.
Oh, shoot. I forgot that was this season.
Yeah, but it's like someone's going to be the odd man out, or maybe it was even last year, but whatever. Someone's going to be the odd man out in this room and or on this team, and who's it going to be? Because they probably can't afford to keep all of them. And guess what? They were able to keep all of them because they've got crazy rich ownership. They've got books that are pretty clean right now. The Russell Wilson money is getting alleviated. There was some fear that the Russell Wilson dead cap is just going to get replaced by the additional money you're paying Benito and all these guys who were cheap. But it's not that way because these contracts are structured brilliantly. Shout out to George Payton in the front office. So I think it operates much like this last offseason where they keep everyone and they re-up everyone. There aren't great free agents out there to spend that $60 million on. Like DeMarcus Ware's not coming through that door. Aqib Talib's not coming through that door. Now cap space is about keeping all your good players because everyone's got enough cap space that they can do it. So don't let them hit the open market because you're not going to find that great replacement out there.
Isn't a sense of optimism, though, Zach, that the fact that you could potentially start to not even bait seems like disingenuous. You're going to start enticing not just free agents, but trade potential partners of players of caliber who want to play for this defense. The question is, do the Broncos need necessarily the upgrades of a splashy move? Possibly. I would say you save that more for the offense, but you're going to start getting a lot of individuals wanting to play for this defense. Now, part and parcel, that's Vance Joseph's defense, and there is no guarantee that he'll be back as the defensive coordinator for the Broncos next season. So, as I walk through that kind of disaster anxiety spiral that I just did because it made me nauseous, what does it look like to you next season if this Broncos defense, finishes on average as good as they're doing right now, which actually is a pretty high tier for NFL defenses. But what does it mean going forward? Like, what do you project? What are you crystal balling for this defense?
Yeah, I think they're lined up really well. Like financially, I think things work out. I know some people might argue against my idea of them keeping everyone because of the guys they have waiting in the wings. Jade Barron, Savion Jones, the aforementioned Q Robinson. And I think those are just problems for later. I think you ideally would be getting contributions on those guys' rookie deals. But like if Savion Jones is so awesome next year that you're like, God, I just wish we could get this guy on the field. You can get out of the DJ Jones contract after 2026 and replenish it that way rather than let JFM or Malcolm Roach walk. And then you need Savion Jones to be that guy. I think it's just smarter to go the other way about it, especially when you're in the financial position the Broncos are in. They're paying Bo Nix $50 million. They might have to make some hard decisions. Right now, they really don't have to financially. They've done it. They've learned their lesson from the Russell Wilson debacle. And now, not only is that dead cap coming off their books, they don't have really any other meaningful dead cap. Otherwise, every other team in the league has some semblance of dead cap, meaningful dead cap, except for the Broncos. So that and a cheap rookie contract, they're able to just load up on dudes defensively. Now, the departure of Vance Joseph is a valid concern. I think he probably brings some dudes with him on this staff. Like, that's just typical. But what I will say, you get 2 third-round picks when he gets hired as a head coach. That's huge. That would really help this team replenish the roster, continue to add to the defensive talent or the offensive talent. And this is no small thing. Jim Leonard is the like dude in waiting on this staff. Longtime listeners of LTB will know I thought very highly of Christian Parker and was like, oh, this is the up and coming DC. This is the next dude. Man, Jim Leonard, I think even more highly of than Christian Parker. And no disrespect to Christian Parker. Lots of respect for him. But like Leonard, when he was the defensive coordinator at Wisconsin, was majoring in a lot of the same ideas you've seen Mike McDonald bring to Seattle, Jesse Minner bring to the Chargers. I think he's on the cutting edge of like defensive philosophy right now. And he's then like kind of learned under Vance Joseph these past 2 years. Like the defensive turnaround started partway through 2023, but these last 2 years have been when it's really been great. And that's when Jim Leonard's been around. And I think he deserves reasonable credit for that uptick, because I think part of that uptick has been the secondary has been much more physical these last 2 years than it was in 2023. That's a trademark of his defenses. And they've been a much more varied in their looks. I think they've complicated a Vance Joseph defense that in Arizona at times, and maybe even in his first stint in Denver, was fairly simplistic. Lots of man, lots of cover 3. They're doing these like complex pressure looks and everything. And I think that hybridizing of like these philosophies would only continue if Leonard takes over. And he's a guy who's probably not going to get a head coaching job too soon. If he does, it might even be back in college. Like he might be more of a college guy than an NFL guy. So you might have him as your DC for a good bit. And so I have all the respect for Vance Joseph. I think he'll be a good head coach. I'm also not worried about what happens if he leaves, because I think the Broncos have perfectly insulated themselves. I'm sorry, Bree. I've got a lot to say about all the questions you're asking me.
I have fantastic questions. I want you to say a lot about them. So thank you, Zach. I appreciate it. But also goes hand in hand kind of with the idea that I don't want to lose my train of thought. That this defense, right? The missing piece, and you were talking about the secondary and being more aggressive, and you can start to see now that it's beginning to work its way in. I know your bold prediction this last week was a Talanoa Hufanga finally capitalizes on a turnover, and man, was he close about 3 separate times. But the body is there. The mind has to click over at the same time. And I'm hoping this Denver Broncos defense, specifically the secondary, is able to capitalize and turn the corner on turnovers, because that's the last thing that is missing from this defense, being absolutely unstoppable. I have gotten extremely off track with where I was going to go with this conversation, but I'm happy that we had, the conversation as it stands. But we do have to touch on the fact that this Denver Broncos team is now, and you already alluded to it a little bit, right? Where you're talking about being tied with the Patriots. It feels like it's a decade ago, and hopefully I'm sharing the correct screen here. Can you see the NFL playoff picture there, Zach? Oh, there it is. Ta-da! All right, let me remove this little banner here so we can take a look at what the in the hunt looks like. Obviously, nobody has secured that spot. But Zach, I don't remember the last time the Broncos were a 96% playoff possibility, because I remember just a little while ago, we were talking about meaningful games in November and just being thankful to be here, right? Meaningful games in the beginning of December. And now the Broncos are almost assuredly a lock for the playoffs, unless they so happen to lose out, which we'll cover that very quickly before we get out of here. But anything else stand out to you, other than probably one of the most beautiful things either of us will see in quite some time, is that emblem above the top of the AFC?
Oh, I did it again. But what I see, Bree, it is gorgeous. it's perfectly lined up for the Broncos, and I don't think people should overlook the enormity of being the number one seed. Like we haven't been here before. It's like Ricky Bobby, like I don't know what to do with my hands. And I've seen a lot of people in my mentions more worried about the Chiefs backing their way into the playoffs than cementing yourselves as the one seed by seeing like the Chiefs beating the Colts next week is probably best case scenario for the Broncos. And that's because this one seed is so valuable. It's an automatic advancement to the second round of the playoffs. Only the top seeds get that. Plus, you get home field advantage for the divisional round and the conference championship. Since they've gone to this new format, the batting average of one seeds making the Super Bowl is incredible. And now granted, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are maybe inflating that number some, or maybe their Super Bowl dynasty run is inflated relative to historical expectations because they've had that incredible gift. Who knows? But we've seen, even like in the NFC, if you have the one seed and you get to play one less playoff game, you get to stay home for the entirety of the playoffs up until the Super Bowl, it's a massive advantage. And right now, the Broncos, per advanced analytics, DVOA, have a 31.5% chance of getting that honor. The Colts are the only team ahead of them at 32.5. And then that last, about a third is split up among everyone else. It lines up really well for them. They just got to take care of business. There's a fair chance they win out, and fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because there is a fair chance, but there is also, some impending trap games on the schedule. Ultimately, I think we need to do a service to the remaining conversation of what does the playoff picture actually look like? What is the seeding going to entail? Who are the teams that we don't want the Broncos to face? Or, maybe we're not afraid of anybody. Maybe we channel a little bit of Bo Nix and I fear nothing. But I do fear a couple of these teams, simply because the NFL is a game where if the ball bounces incorrectly, you're in for it. And so, let's chalk that up for next week. Hopefully we can convince Joey Richards to get on the same page as us, so we have to stop banning him from the program. I think that would be very instrumental. But Zach, last vote of confidence for this Denver Broncos team, as I think we need to fully get the victory week out of our system before we win the bye and go on a nine-week streak and head to Washington to face the Commanders, the Jaden Daniels-less Commanders team. How are you feeling about this team now, removed from the win just a little bit? And give me one thing that you're carrying through this extended break that we get to talk about just anything and everything as I don't know, is it surreal? Because it's surreal to me.
It is surreal, and it's something I'm not used to. And that's why I'd like to apologize for picking against them and being wrong so often this season. Last year, I won our score predictions competition because I never wavered in my faith of the Broncos. And this year it's been quite the opposite. I will say I'm rolling with them the rest of the way. I have a lot of faith in this team, and maybe something crazy happens that dramatically changes my belief, but I think this team's ultimately going to find a way to win on Sundays. I think they've got that championship medal to them. I think this defense is phenomenal. I think they could even hit another gear if the takeaways become more consistent. Bo Nix obviously can take this offense to a gear it hasn't had for much of the year. Save for a couple explosive games. And I look around at the rest of the NFL and I see a lot of flawed teams. I think the best team in football, I know they lost, but I think it's probably the Seahawks. They just have a horrible Achilles heel with Sam Darnold and his ability to handle pressure. We saw that with the Rams. They're a great team. They only lost by 2 with Darnold throwing 4 interceptions, but he threw those 4 interceptions. And I think the Broncos can harass him the same way. And it's like who am I scared of? The Eagles? I've seen the Broncos beat them on the road. The Rams, I guess maybe, but like Matt Stafford behind that offensive line facing this pass rush, that gives me Super Bowl 50 vibes. Like I think every single opponent, like the Jaguars in Denver, I'm sorry. I feel great about that game. Even the Chiefs in Arrowhead, I think I'm picking the Broncos there. Like I would like enjoy this, Denver. You sat through a decade of misery. Like this is your time to be big chested. Not during the Drew Lock era. It's now. Don't be scared of the Chiefs. Be confident. Be braggadocious.
Oh my God, the strays never end. It's been 5 years of this. So we get it, Zach. Like you can move on. You won. You don't have to run victory laps around me.
Hey,
I'm
it's not even
supportive of you.
about
I'm
why.
your biggest fan.
He's the figurehead for the depressing years in Broncos country in my mind. That's not even his fault. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. Every time I hear Joe Flacco's name, I start to have an enviable eye twitch and I can't get over it. And then Mark Sanchez. And then you just like randomly start spouting off any quarterback that's ever played in the league. And they just so happen to be one of the quarterbacks for the Denver Broncos within that streak. It feels like, okay.
R.I.P. Mark Sanchez.
Why? What happened? Just kidding. Yeah, my optimism is this team has an identity. They have built the culture that they wanted to see. Now they're being that change through adversity. They're closing games. This defense continues to just astound me at every turn. And now we know that they can overcome just about anything. The narrative, the doubt, the referees. Yeah, I appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back with another episode. Hopefully it's the trio of us and we will catch you again. If you didn't already, go ahead and tune in to Altitude Adjustment that's streamed live on Tuesday. You can find it right here on Let's Talk Broncos. And then we won't have any game recap because it's obviously the bye week, but we will be back with another episode of Let's Talk Broncos to preview the Commanders versus Broncos for week 13. Alrighty, that'll do it from us. We appreciate you. Thank you